Wales depth chart, folks, for 2022. We're in a weird situation with the Welsh and that they sacked Wayne Pivac. So all of what we're about to talk about is his doing and what Gats has to take over very shortly with the Six Nations on the horizon. As I record this, and ominous signs as I drop the piece of paper, I haven't seen the Welsh squad yet for the Six Nations. It's not out as I record this, so we'll see how much of that changes. It looks like there's a horrendous injury list leading into the Six Nations. So half of the guys I mentioned here appear to be injured. So Gats has got a heck of a job on his hands. But anyway, we've already done this for like Ireland and the All Blacks and the Box and Aussies and French and English and whatnot. So if you want to check out some of the other charts to see how they compare, because all the coaches are doing things a wee bit differently, check out those videos. But yeah, the Welsh one's messy. I thought the Aussie one was bad. This one's horrendous. Yeah, but we'll get to it, and you guys can let us know your thoughts. Yeah. Win-loss record, obviously, for Wales was not great. If your coach is getting sacked, it's obviously not that good. In each of their series, they kind of managed to win one game. So, Six Nations, they beat Scotland. That game at home where they were kind of written off, but they lose the opening game to Ireland where they got really mauled in that one. The scoreline 29-7 was maybe even flattering to Wales because I remember Ireland were just all over them. They lose to England only 23-19, so relatively close. They lose to France 13-9 at home, so again relatively close. But then they lose to Italy at home, and you just can't be doing that. They go to South Africa. They drop the first game 32-29 in a game they probably should have won. And then they win the second one 13-12. And again, they probably should have lost. So it kind of evened out there. And then they lost the decider pretty resoundingly 30 points to 14. So it's kind of like that win in South Africa, being as historic as it was, kind of took away from the overall series loss. And then the games in the autumn, another loss to the All Blacks. A win over the Argentinians, who were just bouncing off a win over the English. So it's an interesting one with the Argentinians. They never really went back-to-back in 2022. So it's almost like the right time to play the Argentinians last year after they'd just come off a big win. And then a loss to Georgia and a loss to Australia really cost Wayne Pivac his job. I mean, the Aussie game they had in the bag and then managed to lose it. And the Georgia game, yeah, were just a bit poor. So, yeah, we'll see in some of the depth stuff, parts of the reasons why, but yeah, suffice to say it wasn't the best year for Welsh rugby in 2022. Looking at the depth by position, we will start with the front row. The front row doesn't look too bad in terms of the guys that got game time and how much game time they got. It looks relatively healthy to me, but the names are different from the names we saw last year. So loosehead Gareth Thomas gets like just under 2/3 of the game time. He is there in green. Wyn Jones is there in blue. He gets just over a quarter of the game time. So between those two guys, that's most of the minutes at loosehead prop. They swapped places from last year where Wyn Jones was the leading candidate. Rodri Jones, Nicky Smith and Reece Carey are there in yellow, purple and blue respectively. So they did not get a lot of game time, but they at least got a wee taste in the year. Obviously, it'd be nice to maybe see the leading guy get a little bit less, and maybe see the third guy get a little bit more, but some of these guys have played a decent amount of rugby at international level in their time, so it's not like they're some 21-year-old guy who really needs the experience in terms of those third guys. For hooker, again, it's a swap from last year with Ryan Elias there in green, just under half the game time, and Ken Owens there in blue, just over a quarter of the game time. So they swapped from last year where Ken Owens was the main guy. I remember Owens spent a lot of time out injured. Likewise, Wyn Jones at loosehead, to be honest. And then Dewey Lake is there in yellow. Similar, just under a quarter of the game time. Just over, sorry, a quarter of the game time for him as well. So that's a relatively even spread. It'll be interesting to see if Gats kind of reverts to his old picks when he gets in. But, yeah, Bradley Roberts is also there in purple. Didn't get a heck of a lot of game time since his move into the Welsh squad and his move to Welsh rugby. But, yeah, there's been 4 guys getting game time. And then tight head, Dylan Lewis, who I believe is one of the guys currently going through injury rehab. He's had over the half of the game time at tight head. Tom Francis is there in blue. And again, He's the guy who was the number 1 guy last year who falls to the number 2 spot. So Wyn Jones, Ken Owens, and Tom Francis has become Gareth Thomas, Ryan Elias, and Dylan Lewis. So Dylan Lewis is green, Tom Francis in blue, and then Sam Wainwright comes onto the scene in yellow. Looked pretty decent from what limited time we saw him. And then Leon Brown didn't get anywhere near the game time as he did last year in purple, but from memory, he was injured. So, yeah, it's relatively healthy, I reckon. I mean, there's still a few guys like Sam Parry, Elliot D, Wilgriff John. Like, there's a bunch of guys who played in 2021 in the front row who didn't get any minutes this year. And it's a full shift from the guys who were the starters last year to the starters this year. But as I said, that's not always the coach's decision. Sometimes that is just who is available. Locks is pretty similar to last year. Look at Adam Baird as your loose head lock. Goodness gracious me. That guy's had a lot of game time. Yeah, pretty much like 4/5, 80% of the game time. Adam Baird. Who else have we seen? Ben Carter in blues had a little bit of game time. Will Rowlands is occasionally slotted in his position. Dafford Jenkins and even Faletau when there's been like dire need of a lock on the field. But yeah, mostly Adam Baird. And he's class. I mean, he's a great maul disruptor, isn't he? He doesn't get a lot of love from people outside Wales, I reckon, sometimes. Because he's not like a real flashy lock. Nobody writes, fan letters to a guy who's a great maul disruptor. Maybe they do. But, yeah, people like, goal kickers and flashy offloaders and stuff compared to guys who can disrupt them all. But Adam Baird, yeah, he's gotten a lot of game time. And then Will Rowlands at tight head lock. Yeah, he's had like 60% of the game time. Now, he's an interesting one because I believe he is injured. I don't think he's going to be available for the Six Nations, or was he late Six Nations? Either way, he's not currently available. And then, by all accounts, he's off to France at the end of this season. So, if my recollection of the Welsh selection criteria is true, I don't think that makes him available for the World Cup, right? So, yeah, the obvious replacement would be the veteran above him in blue, which is Alan Wyn Jones. Still getting on, but, yeah, still going strong. So, he's there in blue. Like I mentioned, Rowlands in green. Adam Baird occasionally switches across. And then Ben Carter as well. So, pretty much the same names on that side. So, pretty familiar. You got Corey Hill, I think, who's playing rugby in Japan, but he's another guy who, due to selection criteria, wouldn't be available. But yeah, Jake Ball maybe is another one who's overseas, right? There's been a few guys who've gotten game time in recent years who've had to be kind of rotated in or out for whatever reason. But yeah, the lock situation is a very interesting one if Will Rowlands isn't available. But we will see how things go. The loose forwards, oh my goodness, I needed more colours. I needed more colours to get through the number 6 jersey for Wales. Look how many guys are on that list. This is quite unbelievable. The top guy, Jack Morgan, has 20% of the minutes, which is not what you usually say for the leading candidate. It's usually 50% or more. So Jack Morgan, green. Dan Lydiate, blue. Ross Moriarty, yellow. Seb Davis, haven't seen him play for a wee while, purple. Justin Tipperick, red. Will Rowlands, I think, had to pack down. I forget the situation, why he had to go onto the blind side, but he did. Josh McLeod, one of the newcomers. Alice Jenkins, believe he got injured. Josh Navidi, another one who's a bit injury prone. Crush Chiunza. Even Ryan Elias, one game, very briefly. Count that with a grain of salt, but oh my goodness. It's a lot of guys. Yeah, that's real messy. You would like it. No other team has had anywhere near that bad situation in one position. That's just a lottery, isn't it? Yeah, very, 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 very different. I mean, some good players there. If there's one position you wouldn't mind Wales getting injuries, it's the loose forwards because you guys seem to just breed them. But yeah, that's a lot of different names. Who's the leading candidate? I mean, last year it was Navidi. But he's another one who doesn't seem to be able to go through a huge run of games without injured. I mean, Lydiate's the same. He seems a bit injury prone. Tipperick seems to slot into different sides of the flanks depending on where he's needed and who he's playing with. Seb Davis is that good kind of lock loose forward option if you play him. But yeah, Crush Chiunza seems the business. But yeah, has had not that much kind of game time and is still very kind of early on in his career. The 7 jersey's a bit better, but still not that much better. Tommy Reffell is there with just over a quarter of the game time in the number 7 jersey in green. He's a newcomer, I guess, in terms of international scene, and took to the game like a duck to water. Did not look out of place whatsoever. So, getting turnovers, making tackles, phenomenal. You guys are spoiled for choice at number 7. You got Reffell there, Tane Basham, who's another one. I'm a big fan of him. He's there in blue. Justin Tipperick, big fan of that guy as well. He's obviously more senior compared to the other guys, but yeah, he's very classy player. Josh Navidi and Jack Morgan as well. So yeah, like I said, some of these, apart from Basham, I think and Reffell, all those guys have appeared on the other flank as well. But you guys got a load of flankers in Wales. Number 8 is at least a bit more consistent with Faletau. Faletau, I think, has also found some pretty good form. So it's no surprise that he gets like 2/3 of the game time. Aaron Wainwright, Josh Navidi, Justin Tipperick, Ross Moriarty, Josh McLeod. So you got a lot of jack of all trades back rows, don't you? Like Tipperick appears in all 3. Moriarty appears in 2. McLeod appears in 2 different positions. So how is Gats going to line the back row up? It's maybe going to depend on who's available. And it wouldn't be surprising for him to kind of revert back to some of the more senior guys, knowing Gats, but you never know. He's got an eye for some of the young talent as well. Turnbull, both of them, Thomas Young. There's a bunch of guys who also played last year who didn't get a crack this year. So depth in Wales in the loose is pretty strong. And even though he got sacked, Pivac did blood a few guys like Josh McLeod. Like Reffell, Jack Morgan, all these guys who didn't get any game time last year found their way into the squad. So, yeah, messy, but we'll see. Into the backs, it's way more consistent than the forwards, which is maybe pleasing. 9 and 10, so 9, Thomas Williams there gets over half the game time. Kieran Hardy gets about a third, and then Gareth Davis gets around 10% of the game time. I think that's maybe the healthiest one Wales has got in terms of first, second, third. And then Gareth Davis has been around the block and, doesn't necessarily need that much game time to be able to step up to a test match. He's been there and done it. Dane Blacker could also be on the list. He sat on the bench one game and didn't get used. So, yeah, he's another guy. I mean, you got other guys in the squad who didn't get selected under Pivac who've played 9 for Wales before, but yeah, that looks relatively healthy. And then 10, Dan Bigger, when he was fit, played all the games, and obviously got injured towards the end of the year. So he had a bit of Priestland in blue, Anscombe in yellow, who's another one I think has got a bit of an injury doubt. Sam Costello there in purple, got a wee crack at Test rugby. Callum Sheedy seems to have fallen out of favour. It doesn't help that he plays in the Premiership, so he's not always available. But yeah, you guys have played a few guys at 10, and I would imagine if Bigger is fit, he's probably the guy. The question remains after the World Cup, assuming somebody else, if Bigger retires. I don't know. Has he talked about retiring? It feels like you need to find somebody else for the next World Cup cycle, but that is the 9 and 10. Relatively stable. 12 and 13, Nick Tompkins. I really rated him. I think he had a great year. Despite Wales' season, you know me, I love my stats. I picked him in my Northern Team of the Year because he was phenomenal. Like, really, really busy player. I mean, not perfect by any means, but yeah, I thought he had a really good year. So he's there. He gets like 60% of the game time. Jonathan Davis got a wee bit of game time, obviously down from the previous year. Owen Watkin, Joe Hawkins got a wee crack, and then Hala Holla there in red. Also got a bit of game time hampered by injury. And then 13, George North. I don't think George North was as impactful as we're used to seeing from George North, but at least he seemed to go through fit and not injured, which is pleasing. And then Watkin in blue. Josh Adams got a game, one game. There in yellow, and then Nick Tompkins had a wee cameo at 13 towards the end of one of the games. But the midfield of Tompkins and North, if North gets back to his blockbusting best, I think could be a pretty effective combo come Rugby World Cup time. And then outside backs is pretty much the same as last year. Josh Adams on the left wing gets more than half the game time. Rio Dyer has been one of the guys who got introduced and I thought looked pretty sharp. Reece Zammit there in yellow got a bit of game time. Johnny McNichol, George North, Alex Cuthbert. There's a few guys who've slotted on the left wing, but it's largely Josh Adams' jersey at the moment, and then Rio Dyer's been kind of keeping it warm from him. The right wing, only 2 guys, and they're split. Reece Zammit, I think, got marginally more game time than Alex Cuthbert on the other wing. So I think Zamo is probably the leading candidate, but I think he's also injured at the moment, isn't he? So, troubling. And then fullback seems to be another one you're pretty well stacked. I mean, Liam Williams, when he's fit, gets more than half the game time there. Lewis Rees-Zammit had a wee bit of game time there. Gareth Anscombe had a bit of game time there. Josh Adams, Johnny McNichol, and then even Lee Halfpenny towards the end of the year had to step in. He was named a couple of times, but always seemed to get a wee bit injured. Injured seems to be a real common theme, doesn't it? Kind of frustrating. So, I mean, some other guys, Johnny Williams, Tom Rogers, Jonah Holmes, Hallam Amos obviously retired. Owen Lane, if he could work on his defence, could be another option. But, yeah. Looking at the Welsh depth thing overall, I mean, it's mainly 6 and 7 that look really horrible, just for the amount of guys that were used. A decent amount of the backup guys have got some game time, like Watkin got decent minutes. Like Kieran Hardy got some decent minutes. And some of the kind of veteran guys who've maybe not got the game time they used to, like of Ken Owens and Tom Francis, Alan Wynne-Jones, they've not been kind of left out in the cold. But, yeah, it's certainly been changed from the previous year. If you were looking at, like, how does Wales compare to some of the other sides, like, they're more towards the rotation side of things. If you're looking at Ireland, they're full steam ahead on keeping the same 15 for as much of the game as they possibly can. Like, just under 70% of the overall minutes are played by the starting 15, which is very consistent. Whereas Australia is down at the other end with like only 51% of the game time being played by the starting 15. Largely due to injury with the Aussies, and maybe you could say the same with Wales. So Wales is at 54%, so marginally ahead of like the likes of Australia and England in terms of keeping things consistent, but still way edging towards the rotation side of things. They've used 53 players. If you don't include Dane Blacker, it's 52. So that's among the most. I think Scotland was the most with 53 as well. So yeah, like I said, it's not always by choice. Sometimes it is. Like Pivac seems to have a little bit of a thing of playing favourites, and some guys would fall out of favour and not be able to get back in, and he would give weird reasons why, like this guy's too big or too small or doesn't do this, doesn't do that, and you'd look at the stats or look at the body size and just go, that's not true. But I don't know what's going on. We don't have to worry about Pivac anymore. It's all going to be about Gats. So we will see. Yeah, we will see. Not a very old or young squad. The average was in the 27s, which is about the average of all the squads this year. So I guess that's helped by having a mix of some real youngsters and some senior vets as well. So the most selected 15 under Pivac in 2022, Gareth Thomas, Ryan Elias, Dylan Lewis, front row. Like I mentioned, that's a total change from the previous year, which was Jones, Owens and Francis. The locks of Baird and Rollins is the same as last year, but as I mentioned, there's still a question mark about Rollins going forward. The back row, Faletau's the only same guy from last year because it's Jack Morgan, Rafael and Faletau instead of Navidi and Tipuric, who were there the year before. Thomas Williams and Dan Biggar is the same as 2021. Tompkins and North is a slight change from 2021 where we saw Jonathan Davis, but like I said, Tompkins seems to have supplanted him, at least with Pivac. And then Adams, Rees-Zammit and Liam Williams is the same as 2021. So at least like the locks and the back three and the 9-10 combo have been, you know, kind of consistent year on year, whereas all the other kind of positions have had some kind of rotational changes. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the Welsh depth chart, folks. You guys will have to let us know what your thoughts are. Yeah, that took a wee while to get this one ready, so if you want to buy us a beer, I could use a cold one because it's a pretty warm day down here in summer in NZ. But yeah, we look forward to the Six Nations. Like I said, I haven't seen the squad yet, but it'll be interesting to compare what we've seen here with what Wales, with what Warren Gatland selects for his Welsh squad. But as I said, part of it may be largely dependent on who he's got available because it does seem like a lot of guys are under some kind of injury cloud. But anyway, you guys let us know your thoughts. And I will talk to you guys again soon. See you later.